Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to a late night edition Mets Hot Stove Live. How is everybody doing today on this football championship Sunday? If you are watching the football games, you are knowing that Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, and the Niners and the Lions are trying to meet them there in Vegas. But we are going to talk about our New York Mets. We got a little bit to talk about. The Mets did make a sign-in yesterday, and it got Mets fans kind of, I would say, 50-50 on being, okay, that's a decent sign-in, but not exactly what they were expecting, since we thought Adam Ottavino, after he opted out, would have been on another team, just because of the fact that what his comments were a couple of days ago and why he opted out of his $6.5 million contract. And I think that's something that we would have to talk about as well. But before we get into the topics of the night, I want to show you on the screen what you are looking at is the upcoming schedule for the New York Mets. We got February 14th is when the pitchers and the catchers report. So it's just, about a little over 2 weeks away. February 15th is full squad workouts. That is when everybody is in spring training and should be reporting. February 24th is the spring training opening day. Sorry about that. February 20. I put February 24th twice, but you get what I'm saying. February 25th, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, that's my fault. March 16th, that's what it was. March 16th is the spring breakout game, which is the best prospects of the Mets and the Nationals face off against each other. It is not February 24th. It is March 16th, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a typo right there. And March 28th is obviously opening day at Citi Field against the Milwaukee Brewers. So when you look at this upcoming schedule, and I do apologize for the typo there. It wasn't supposed to be February 24th. It's supposed to be March 16th is when the spring breakout game. I think this is one of the things that finally Rob Manfred got right with baseball in general, with all the stupid new rules and everything else that he tried to destroy baseball with. This is kind of cool. Getting each team's best prospects to play in a game, which is just allocated to top prospects, or just the majority of your prospects, is really, really cool to look at. And I do appreciate the fact that you get to see your guys in a real game against other top prospects. And I think that's going to be exactly what I think is going to be a lot of fun looking at that. But let's get to the topics, guys. We've got about an hour show today as the football game is going on right now. Yes, Ottavino is back. I do know that people are probably not happy with the sign-in. There was a lot of people that were very pissed off about that. But the Mets did get a $2 million discount, considering what Ottavino would have got paid if he opted into his contract, a little over $6 million. The Mets gave him 1 year, $4.5 million. I know. People just despise Ottavino. Like in 2022, which was one of his best seasons of his career, just over a 2 ERA, he was still very bad with holding on runners. And people brought that up a lot yesterday and even today on Mets Twitter regarding the fact that he can't hold on runners. Well, in 2022, when he pitched very well, he was not holding on runners either. I know with the new rules, they can steal at will at this point now. But the problem that he had last year was his walks were up and his strikeouts were down. Besides the stolen bases, was that he was walking more batters, so more runners got on. But if you look at his total numbers, he had a pretty good season, considering the fact that if you look around baseball, he is actually in the above average of relievers that were on the market for the New York Mets, or just in general as free agents. So he was actually one of the above average relievers available left on the market. And again, would I would have went back and got Adam Ottavino? No. But if he goes out there and gives you another 3.21 ERA in 2024, it's a hell of a lot better than getting somebody that you're bringing into New York that hasn't pitched in New York, that hasn't pitched in this pressurized situation in New York. Could be a lot different. You know what you're getting from Adam Ottavino. And he still has the stuff there where he can still be a very good reliever. And we've got to remember, we're not going to be using him most likely as an eighth inning guy. I do think that it's going to be either Jorge Lopez or if the Mets sign a Stanek or somebody else. But I think Stanek is still actually an option for the New York Mets. Adam Ottavino is not going to be your eighth inning guy. He is not going to be your bridge guy to Edwin Diaz. Maybe every now and then, depending on how they use the bullpen. But it's looking more and more, if they don't sign anybody else in the bullpen, that Jorge Lopez is the guy that they really, really think can have a bounce back 2021, 2022 type of, when he was with the Baltimore Orioles as a closer. They think they can tap into that potential again. And why not, right? Why not think that you can do that? Because, again, bullpens are fickle, right? A bullpen that was probably middle of the pack or less than average in Major League Baseball could have, be a middle of the pack or even above average, and now you have a different bullpen going into the season. And you have to remember, just with Edwin Diaz coming back, that just adds another element to your bullpen that the Mets lacked last year. Yes, David Robinson was extremely good, but when you only could trust David Robinson, and Adam Ottavino was good, was, I would say, just under, I would say less than average, even though his ERA showed you that he actually kept runners on and didn't let a lot of them score. And, again, if you can have a couple of guys that have a 3.2 ERA in your bullpen, you got something cooking there, because you get a lot of guys that are in the 4 to 5 range in your bullpen, and that's when you start running into trouble. So I do understand that people see it's not a new face. And I think that's the problem with a lot of Mets fans. They don't like to dig into the stats and realize that Ottavino didn't have a bad year. It's just that, and he was the type of guy that if he lowers those walks a little bit, he's probably an above average reliever for your bullpen. And because he's not a new face, most Mets fans don't like bringing him or don't like the signing because it's a known face. And that's understandable. I understand that. But you could do a lot worse, because people want Ryan Stanek, but he had a full run more ERA than Ottavino last year. His strikeouts were a little bit down. he wasn't striking out at the rate he was 2 years ago, and he wasn't really missing a lot of bats. And on top of that, he was walking a little bit more. So people want Ryan Stanek, who had a full run ERA more last year, but don't want Ottavino, which is interesting to me because it's just a new face. That's all it is. Ryan Stanek didn't have a better year than Adam Ottavino, but because he's not a new face, most Met fans don't like it. But Ryan Stanek, people want, because 2 years ago, just like Adam Ottavino had his best year of one of his best years of his career, and we're going back to 2023? I'm excuse me, 2022? Why not do that for Adam Ottavino? I don't think it's fair that Ryan Stanek, who has not been a better pitcher in his career than Adam Ottavino, and remember, Adam Ottavino was in Colorado a lot of the years. We look at it. I love how we pick and choose, and this is including me, not just you guys, me as well. But if you look at just 2023, then Adam Ottavino was a better pitcher overall than Ryan Stanek. If you go back to 2022, Adam Ottavino was better than Ryan Stanek. And we look at it in a totally different perspective because if it's a new face, it's more approved by Mets fans. And I think that's silly when you have to really look at the fact that Adam Ottavino is not a bad reliever. Now, he'll annoy you with runners on, but again, if he lowers those walks just a little bit, and even if those strikeouts don't go up, he still strands runners. And I think that's important for a bullpen arm, right? Most of the time, these guys either come in with runners on, most of the time, but it's always ideal. You want your reliever to start a clean inning. That's understandable. But just having a new face and not looking at the stats the prior year is silly to me. And again, would I want Ryan Stanek? If the Mets tomorrow get Ryan Stanek, I'm not going to complain. Like another arm in the bullpen that has the potential, because you can't tell me, oh, don't look at 2 years ago with Jorge Lopez or Adam Ottavino, but look at 2 years ago for Ryan Stanek. It's only to fit your narrative, and that doesn't make sense. Explosive. See, I don't think this is going to be a Stearns decision when it comes to Soto. Explosive. I think they're setting themselves up for 2025. And again, I talked about this earlier in the offseason. It was okay. And again, if you go back to last offseason, I had a lot of Dodger fans on my channel last offseason when they only signed JD Martinez and let, Trey Turner leave and only signed JD Martinez and basically did nothing in that offseason. Dodger fans were pissed. Remember, coming off another loss in the playoffs, they were pissed that they only signed JD Martinez. They thought that they were going to have a down year. Now, they ended up didn't have a down year, but teams in that division that were supposed to be better were not. So you have to understand the fact that the Dodgers did what they did. They were resetting their financial budget, even though the Dodgers have a ton of money because they have a group owning the team. They have just as much money as Steve Cohen as a group. They even reset their budget to have the offseason that they currently are having this year. That's what the Mets are setting up for next season. If you just look at it, why do you think they're signing a lot of one-year deals, a lot of minor league deals, no long-term contracts? Because of the fact they don't want all those extra baggage contracts on the books, because they believe, and if you really look at it, the 2020 after 2024 into the 2025 offseason, the free agents are a lot better than they were this year. And I think the long-term contracts are worth giving more to those players that are available, and guys like Soto. Obviously, the Mets are going to go after Soto. Now, will they get him? Again, when guys are free agents, anything can happen. But again, I say this all the time. It is very, 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 very rare that a player takes less money to go to another team unless it's a team they were currently on. Again, does anybody believe that Juan Soto is going to take less money to go back to the Yankees? Probably not. Now, if he was still on Washington, or if he was still on Washington, the team that he came up with, maybe there's a chance of like that, right? Again, name me a player that took less money that went back, that didn't go back to his original team, that took less money. The only person who did that, again, I talked about that, is Aaron Judge. And this is why I go back to Pete Alonso. The fact of the matter is that we know he's not taking a penny less to come back to the Mets because he signed Scott Boras. So there you go. And that's the issue that I'm having when it comes to people complaining that this isn't the offseason that they should be having. When they spent money, you were happy, but then when it didn't work out, you bitched and moaned, and now it's about the older players. But when they signed Scherzer, it was the first step of saying, hey, you could flaunt your wallet and it's okay. And again, Scherzer was coming off a really good season. I know the postseason was an issue, didn't start a game and everything like that, but he was still one of the best pitchers on the market. The same thing with Verlander. He won the Cy Young the prior year. So, and again, Verlander wasn't really an issue. He pitched pretty well, and he was only getting better until the Mets traded him. But we act like, when things go wrong, it's a bad signing, right? Everybody says, oh, it's a bad signing, right? It's after the fact type of thinking, and that I don't like. I don't like people doing that, right? I still thought, you got to remember, they weren't trying to trade prospects and trying to build their farm system. So the only way to get players, and again, the majority of the free agents are over 30 years old now. Most of them. The majority of your free agents are over 30 years old. Juan Soto is an anomaly that are in his mid-20s, right? That doesn't happen. So when you sign free agents, they're going to be north of 30, probably closer to 35. That's just the way free agents are. They're over 30 years old. So if you're going to talk about age, then don't ever sign a free agent that's over 30 years old then, because 99.9% of those free agents, at least the good ones, or above average good ones or great ones, are north of 30 and at least right into their prime, going out of their prime. That's what you get in free agency. And that's the whole point of when you hear David Stearns and even Steve Cohen last year saying you have to build a farm system, because even though the Dodgers spend money, make trades, re-sign players or sign guys in free agency, they still replenish certain parts of their team through their farm system, right? Look at their rotation. Prior to this year, right, they were using their farm system to replenish their rotation, right? Guess what? Guys got injured. They didn't pitch as well, and they pivoted, right? They're not counting on Walker Buehler as much. They're not counting on May, right? They got Yamamoto. They got Glass now, right? They're not counting on putting all their chips into May and putting their chips into Walker Buehler. So they're not doing that. And they had to pivot, because if they were not going to sign a Yamamoto, or even if they did sign Yamamoto and didn't trade for Glass now, well, the rotation with guys who coming back from injury, that's not a lot to count on. So they went out and spent money. What the Mets are trying to do is very similar to what the Dodgers are doing. Again, I go back to saying this before we get back to we're going to skip the standings since we talked about it just enough, but I'll bring that up in just a second. If you look when the new ownership group of the Dodgers took over, they signed big names that were veteran guys between the ages of 33 to 37 years old to try to win while building a farm system. When Steve Cohen took over and says he wants to be the East Coast Dodgers, that's what he's doing. If you look at it from point blank range, if you look at it side to side, the Mets did almost exactly what the Dodgers' new ownership group did when they first took over. They took over, they signed veteran guys and not use their farm system to trade for better players. They signed veteran guys that some of them were over the hill, some of them were just at around their peak of prime. But that's what the Mets are trying to do. They're trying to spend money to still try to win while not using their farm system to obtain players and trying to build their farm system. It's almost a carbon copy of what the Dodgers did when the new ownership group took over. The only difference is Mets fans, they see Steve Cohen and they think they just need to spend every single time. And again, yes, you want to spend in certain areas, but when you got a farm system that you're expecting a Christian Scott, a Drew Gilbert, a Luisano Acuna, a Ronnie Mauricio, and this year, Beatty and Alvarez, if you're expecting those guys to be a part of this team, well, if they do pan out, just think, if Alvarez is what everybody's expecting, right? He is, 30-plus home run guy, and we'll get to that at the end of the stream, 30-plus home run guy, batting about 240, right? Well, you don't got to worry about your catcher, right? If Brett Beatty shows a little bit of something and is better than what he's shown, well, you necessarily don't really have to worry about third base, even though I think Ronnie Mauricio was going to be the future third baseman, and everybody believes he's going to be good, if not great. Ronnie Mauricio is going to be a third baseman, right? So now, if Drew Gilbert pans out and Christian Scott is the pitcher that everybody believes he's going to be, now instead of signing 3 free agent pitchers or 2 or 3 free agent starting pitchers to add to your rotation, now it's only 1 or 2 instead of 3, right? If Mike Vasil is a decent number 3 or even a perfect number 4, now you only have to sign 2 free agents on the market instead of 3. That's where you want to go. You want to make sure that your farm system sets you up where you don't have to. Now remember, if the Dodgers didn't spend $1 billion, look at their team without those signings, because a lot of those farm system guys, they traded away. And this is another reason why you want to build up your farm system, because the majority of these guys are not going to be on your team. Again, you can't fit everybody on your 26-man roster, right? So some of them are going to be assets in trades that you feel fit to help your team either at the deadline or in the offseason. That's where the farm system comes into play. If you look at the Dodgers, they traded over 16 top 40 prospects in their system. They didn't all just come up. We have to remember that. They didn't all just come up and become Dodgers. If you look around the diamond for the Dodgers, there's not a lot of homegrown guys there. A lot of them are, look at Muncy. He wasn't come up as a Dodger. He was basically a nothing. They signed him for very cheap. And guess what happened? He became a really good player. Justin Turner was a Mets prodigy, right? We look at it in a lot of different ways. And we act like the Dodgers are just, filling their spots with prospects when they just spent $1 billion. If their farm system was so trustworthy and good, why would they spend $1 billion? Because they know they needed to. Because they can't trust May or Bueller coming back from injury, even though they got electric stuff. You can't trust them, because if those guys go down again, where do you turn to? That's why they traded for Glass now. That's why they signed Yamamoto. That's why they just signed James Paxton. They're basically revamping their entire rotation, with, if you look at it, wouldn't have been a trusted rotation going into 2024 if they didn't make those signings and trades. So we have to look at it in so many different scenarios. And that's what we have to understand as Met fans, that, look, I'm not saying that, it's 37 years since the championship, guys. I understand that. In my lifetime, I haven't seen a championship. My father's seen 2. Some people that are in their 50s and 60s seen both, right? And I understand that. But we have to understand that there's a method and there's a plan here. The plan might not make you happy right away, But if you have a sustainable farm system where if somebody gets hurt, you can plug them in from your farm system. If there's a trade where, say, if the Mets need a rotation arm at the deadline, you have those assets to trade and still not hurt your farm system and make it a terrible farm system. That's what you have to remember about building a farm system. It's not just, oh, build your farm system to bring all these guys up. No. It's not just about that. Because, again, everybody talks about the Dodgers farm system, yet they just spent $1 billion. If their farm system was so really, really good and they continue to just plug in, play these guys, then we can talk about that. But they just spent $1 billion because the guys that they were expecting to be a part of these teams and do well either been injured or hasn't performed to their capabilities. And that's where you have the problem. And that's where I think that we have to talk about a little bit more. George, exactly. Well, again, but look at Hanley Ramirez was past his prime. Adrian Gonzalez was on his last leg. Yasiel Puig, even though he was electric, if you really look at the numbers, he was not very good. Right? Again, those are guys that were leaning away from their prime. And they were the 33s, the 34, 35-year-olds, just like the Mets with Marte, Canna, Escobar. Again, just because the results didn't pan out doesn't mean, and let's not act like Hanley Ramirez and Adrian Gonzalez got, hundreds of millions of dollars here. They didn't. We have to remember that. And I think we forget the fact that, hey, Chris, how you doing? Yeah, it's easy. I understand that. But again, and the whole point is that you can't just forget about your farm system and just spend money and think it's always going to work out, because not all the time it's going to work out. The problem with the Mets was that when guys went down, you had your Tyler McGills, your Jose Butos, your David Petersons. Those guys aren't going to put you over the top. You're not throwing, you're not walking in a May for an injury or anything like that. And again, you gotta build your farm system so you can make those trades needed when you need something on your roster at the deadline or in the offseason. And if you build up your farm system well enough, what the Mets are trying to do, and they're probably a top 5, top 6 farm system now you have options. The Mets did not, and this is what we forget, the Mets did not have no options. All they could do to make their roster better was either two ways. Was either just sign veteran guys, which when you in free agency, you're really not going to find anybody under 30 years old that's any good. They're at least at the end of their prime or past their prime. That's how free agency works. You might get a pitcher here or there that's maybe directly in their prime, but usually 9 out of 10 times it's not the top of the line starters, and that's where you have to look at as well, right? And the other way is breaking it down. If Steve Cohen would have came in here and not traded for Lindor and just broke everything down and bring up the kids that were seemingly in the farm system that wasn't very much, even though Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo were already here, and just played, the crap of the league that you would have had here, what you saw with the Mets late in the season, and you get, you would have had to break it down. Would you have been okay trading McNeil, trading Alonso, bringing a ton of assets prospect-wise 3 seasons ago? Because if he would have done that, Met fans would have revolted. So let's not act like everybody wasn't excited that the Mets traded for Lindor, signed Lindor, bring in Canna, Escobar, Marte, Scherzer, Verlander. Because he didn't have to do that. He could have came in here and blew the whole thing up. He could have blew the whole thing up, and you would have probably not known any of the guys. Everybody that you were a fan favorite, the Nimmos, the McNeils, the Alonsos, probably even DeGrom, you would have probably traded those guys to bring in assets, because that's how when new ownerships comes in, when new people come in, that's usually what happens. It's rare that they keep the core or the McNeils, the Alonsos, Nimmos, DeGroms of the world, Because what Cohen tried to do, all right, we got a couple of years with these guys before their contracts are up. Let's try to win. Let me spend money, bring in some guys, make it the team better, and see if we can win something while still building a farm system. That's what he tried to do. Because I'm telling you this right now, if Steve Cohen would have came in here with all his billions of dollars and everybody was so happy that the Wilpons were gone, and he wouldn't spend a dime and blew up the team, everybody would have been pissed off just as much as they are now. So you're between a rock and a hard place here. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, well, I want him to buy this guy, buy that guy. Oh, why don't we just trade these guys to get better players? Great, we could do that. But when you look at it, you have to remember, he could have easily blew it all up as soon as he took over this team. And he didn't do that. He tried to win in the only way that he could have in these first couple of years, which was spend money, because the Mets didn't have a farm system to say, okay, let's bring up this guy and fill a hole. They didn't have these guys. Mauricio wasn't ready yet. Alvarez wasn't ready yet. Beatty wasn't ready yet. All these other guys. We didn't even have outfield prospects ready to go. We didn't have any starting pitching prospects. There's your problem. Now the Mets have pitching prospects. Now they have outfield prospects. They have a ton of infield prospects. Now they have that. Now they got guys that can put into your roster that you can use as assets in trade and spend money. Again, this is not the year that everybody, this was the year. Now, if you want to be, I would say, let me see. How can I put it? Because I don't want to say it as, oh, if you want to be realistic, this is the year Cohen should have had in the first year he took ownership. He should have signed a lot of one-year deals and traded off people and get prospects back for all the guys that you had in your roster. Because you're still losing, right? He tried to win with veteran guys because that was the only way that they can get better without blowing it up and taking a few years. Because if you want to talk about building a farm and building a team, that takes 4 to 5 years. The Mets did it within 3 years without trading the core guys that everybody seems to love, yet all we do is lose with these guys. So if Cohen would have came in and blew it all up, you would have been pissed off that a billionaire owner with the richest owner in baseball blew it all up. When he came in here, people would have killed him. Nobody gives him credit for trying to win by spending money. It didn't work out, but you don't know that until after it happens. So, of course, you're going to be, the Monday morning quarterback after the fact and saying, oh, I knew this was going to happen. No, you didn't. Because in August, when the Mets were one of the best teams in baseball in 2022, not one Mets fans were bitching and moaning about the age of the team, which was one of the oldest in baseball. Nobody was. Because there was no alternative to getting younger. Because if you would have used that alternative and get younger, you would have been a team that was in full rebuild mode, and you wouldn't have the Nimos, the McNeils, and the Alonsos, because they would have been traded. Because that's how you blow up a team and rebuild. So he didn't do that. So we'll see. All right, let's get to the next one. Stanek. Do I think the Mets are going to get Stanek? I think the price has to be right. I want a lefty in the bullpen. I'd rather go get a Wandy Peralta. I think another lefty is probably more valuable than a Ryan Stanek and the potential of Ryan Stanek. I know people are like, oh, if you get Ryan Stanek, now the bullpen looks a heck of a lot better. But I like 2 lefties in the bullpen. Okay? 2 lefties in the bullpen gives Mendoza options, right? Especially in the NL East where you got to worry about Harper, Schwarber, Olsen, those type of guys that you have to worry about. You can't use really in the 6th inning with those guys at the plate, and then you have no other lefty for late in the games. And yeah, you might have guys you might trust later in games that are right-handed, but I always like that second left-hander you can bring in a big spot against a left-handed bat. And that's where I think, well, Sanders, that's not true because the Dodgers didn't do that. They supplement, they buy the free agents and then they supplement with their farm system. They just spent $1 billion on free agents and trades. So they supplemented their team with free agents and they're going to supplement with their farm system, right? What Sanders, what you're talking about is what the Braves have done, right? The Braves have built their farm system, brought these guys up, and supplemented with okay free agents, right? They made trades, but the Braves didn't make any trades. They had, this is what I don't understand when people talk about the Braves, right? The Braves had no other choice but to hope all their prospects turned out, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be as good as they were. It's not like they're signing, Yamamoto or signing any big name free agents, because they don't do that. The same thing with the Baltimore Orioles, right? The Baltimore Orioles don't spend any money. They have to rely on every farm system prodigy panning out. The Mets, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, big market teams don't have to all rely on the farm system. You don't build your farm system and supplement with free agents. Because if you want to talk about that, then Nimmo, McNeil, and Alonso are your farm system. You should supplement them with free agents, not just your farm system. And the Mets tried to, with no farm system over the last couple of years, they tried to supplement with free agents because they projected to have a core in those three guys I just mentioned. And if you want to include an indoor in that, you can. So, no, playoff teams don't use their farm system as a team. If you look at the teams all around baseball, except for the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is an anomaly, because I can assure you, would anybody be shocked if the Arizona Diamondbacks are middle of the pack and don't make the playoffs, or are another fringe wildcard team? Nobody would be shocked, right? Look at the playoff teams, right? The Baltimore Orioles took, 16 years to actually be good again, 10 years to be good again and make the playoffs? That's what we're talking about here. So you have a core. The Mets, look, if they sign Pete Alonso, they're telling you that they trust the Nimmo, McNeil, Alonso core along with Lindor. So you're going to war with those guys. You're going to supplement them with free agents and, of course, farm system. But you don't, especially big market teams, they do not use their farm system to build a roster and then supplement with free agents. No big market team does that. All right. The Braves and the Orioles have to rely on their farm system or they wouldn't be good teams, because they don't sign big contracts. They just don't. All right. So let's get to the next topic. Still in on DH. John Heyman the other day talked about the Mets are still in on a DH if they see it as a fit still and see it as a spot where they want to spend in their budget a DH bat. Now, if it's up to me and it's between another bullpen arm and a DH bat, I'm all on board getting a DH bat, and I'll roll with the bullpen we have. The reason why is because I said this earlier. Bullpens are fickle, right? The Diamondbacks didn't really have a good bullpen. They got to the World Series. 2 years ago, the Phillies had one of the worst bullpens in baseball, got to the World Series, right? The Texas Rangers, look at their bullpen, right? They weren't very good either, right? The starters were good and their offense was good, right? The same thing with the Phillies that year. The bullpens weren't that good, so we're going insanely crazy with bullpens. Usually what you want to have is a closer that you can trust. Diaz is that guy, right? Because there's a lot of games, even though with David Robinson pitching well, there was games where we couldn't get to David Robinson, or what the problem with the Mets last year was the starters couldn't go deep, and they were giving up 4, 5, 6 runs a game, and the offense was always trying to come back. So David Robinson, the opportunities he had, he shut them down in one game. But the hard part was getting leads to David Robinson. That's the problem. So that's where we are with that. Duran, exactly. People forget the fact that, yeah, they had Strawberry, they had Mookie, they had Doc. But look at all the other moves that they made, right? The Mets weren't the Mets until they traded for Gary Carter, Keith Hernandez, right? That's when they really took that next step, right? They supplemented a lot of, they traded, they signed guys, and that's what put them over the top with supplementing a couple of guys from their farm system that just worked out perfectly, right? So that's what's interesting, and it's very interesting to look at because it is. Yeah, okay, Joel, but you're wrong. Ottavino is an above average. Again, do you want Ryan Stanek? I'm curious because I just talked about. I don't know if you were there earlier, right? Were you? Right, Joel? Do you want Ryan? You want Ryan Stanek over Ottavino? Yes or no? I'm just curious because do you look at the stats with Ryan Stanek and Adam Ottavino last year? Because Adam Ottavino overall stats were better, and it wasn't even close. It was a full run difference from Adam Ottavino with a 3.21 with Stanek that had a 4.09 ERA. Okay, Joe, but again, I'm not talking about that. The fact of the matter is that you wanted somebody else that wasn't better than Adam Ottavino last year. Now, the reason why people don't like him because he's not a new face. But if you look at his overall stats, he was the second. He was a pretty good reliever. And if he has another 3.21 ERA, the Mets are going to be in better shape, bullpen-wise, because Edwin Diaz is back, because you got Raley, who is good. No, Ottavino doesn't stink. Again, you have this stupid mindset that he stunk. He didn't. Because he didn't have a 2.2 ERA like he did in 2022, that's why he was bad. The majority of bullpen arms have around the 3 ERA, exactly where Adam Ottavino is. And again, name me 3 guys in the Brewers and Yankees bullpen, because you probably can't, because there are no names in their bullpens. You got to remember, bullpens are fickle. Names are irrelevant. Now, again, I talked about this early, Easy. The problem was Adam Ottavino's walks went up and his strikeouts went down. Yeah, I did watch the game. But you also got to look at the stats. Yeah, I understand that. But again, look at the positions that they were putting Adam Ottavino in, right? They were always in the worst spots possible, right? The Mets barely ever had a lead when Adam Ottavino was in the game, right? Any run mattered. It's understandable. Again, there's no reason why Adam Ottavino can't have a 3 ERA this year. His strikeouts go up, his walks go down, and he's already a better reliever than probably what you would have. Because people want Ryan Stanek, yet he had a worse year than Adam Ottavino. And people want him. You know why? Because he's a new face. Why would you want Ryan Stanek? Why? Because if you want to go back 2 years ago, Adam Ottavino was better. He was just as good, if not better, than Ryan Stanek. You want to look at last year? How far you want to go back? That's why it's a stupid conversation, because you rather have Stanek. Why? Adam Ottavino throws 97, 98, just like Stanek. Now, Ryan Stanek doesn't really, he doesn't, have much issues with stolen bases. But again, his walks were up, his strikeouts were down, just like Adam Ottavino. But you want a guy who had a full run ERA more than Adam Ottavino. So Ryan Stanek couldn't hold runners. He couldn't strand runners. Adam Ottavino did. Well, see, that's the problem. Because you don't look at the full picture. You only look at, because he's a new face, that's why you want him. Like, that makes no sense. Do you want a guy that was better last year or worse last year? It's crazy to me. And again, would I want Ryan Stanek? Absolutely. Bring in Ryan Stanek, right? Because with bullpens, anybody can be good, right? I've seen, again, Joel, you can think he sucks, but he doesn't. In 2022, you were patting him on the ass because he was very good. Adam Ottavino was great. Strikeouts were up, walks were down. Stolen bases were still an issue, but that's been his problem his entire career. But he was one of the best relievers in baseball 2 years ago, just like Ryan Stanek. Last year, Adam Ottavino overall was a better pitcher in the bullpen than Ryan Stanek. That's the point. The fact of the matter is, you want a different face. That's the problem. You just want a different face to, rub your ego. No, Drew Smith is terrible. But we're talking about Adam Ottavino, who's been a career very good to above average reliever, than Drew Smith, who has been a complete disaster. Drew Smith, and that's the other problem with the Mets bullpen last year, was Drew Smith had to take on a bigger role because of the Edwin Diaz injury. Everybody had to take a step up. And that was the problem. The fact of the matter is, everybody can take a step back this year because of Edwin Diaz. And I think that's important to realize. No, Louis, I wouldn't have. Because I know bullpens are fickle. The best bullpen in baseball last year in 2023 won't be the best bullpen in baseball next year, because that's how it works in baseball. Look at the best teams. I can guarantee you, nobody can name 3 Yankees or 3 Brewers in their bullpen, not name their closer. Name me 3 guys, because nobody can. Yet they had, for the last couple of seasons, the Yankees and the Brewers have been 1-2 in bullpen ERA. Yet nobody can tell you how many guys and name 3 guys that are not named the closer on their teams. Because if you're only going to go back to stats last year, Adam Ottavino was better than Ryan Stanek. You want to go back 2 years ago? Adam Ottavino and Stanek were on basically the same level, if not better than, probably a little bit better. All you remember is, we give up a big home run. Oh, no. Yeah, but what about the games that he pitched well and stranded runners? Because a 3.21 ERA to a 4.09 ERA tells me that one pitcher stranded more runners than the other pitcher. That's the point. Oh, yeah, exactly. King and Loizaga. King gone. Loizaga injured for most of the year, but came back later on in the year. Actually, I would rather. Who would you rather have? Stanek with his 4.09 ERA? You see, that's the point. Like, you only talk about the fact that you only see the bad games, and I guess, hey, I kill Alonso. Why can't I kill Alonso just like I kill Ottavino, right? Because I remember Pete Alonso not putting the bat on the ball, and if he wasn't hitting home runs, he wasn't driving in runs. Why don't we talk about that, right? You want a pitcher who was worse off than Adam Ottavino last year. Like, I'm sorry, Adam Ottavino is an average to above average reliever. That's just a fact. Now, do I want better relievers? Would I rather wanted Jordan Hicks, who went to another team because they offered him a starting role? Yeah, of course. Of course I would want him. But again, the best bullpens in the league, you can't even name the 6th, 7th, 8th inning guys because they're no names. Those are guys that are not that nobody really knows of, yet they had good seasons. Yeah, and you know who also gave up a lot of hits too? Every other bullpen guy. Again, you're looking at a year when everything went wrong for the Mets, when everybody had to take a bigger step in the bullpen. You pushing everybody back now. Remember, Ottavino was the guaranteed 8th inning guy last year because of the Diaz injury. He doesn't have to be that. I'd rather him in the 6th and the 7th than in the 8th or the 9th at times we've seen him. Now, if the Mets do get Ryan Stanek as well, or maybe like a Wandy Peralta, give me one more arm in that bullpen, and now that makes the bullpen better because you push everybody back. Drew Smith is not going to see the 7th through 9th inning. Occasionally, yes. You got to give guys days off, pitching a couple days in a row. Yes. But Drew Smith is going to be a 5th, 6th inning guy. When a starter doesn't go deep, you'll see Drew Smith in the middle of a game. That's it. You're not seeing Drew Smith in the 7th and 8th like you did last year. The reason why we had that, because Diaz wasn't there. And when, again, we talk about from April until the middle of May, not one pitcher went past the 6th inning for a starter. So your bullpen was already behind the 8 ball because your starters couldn't go deep. So by the time the end of May into June came, your bullpen was already shot. And when your starters were finally trying to figure it out, your bullpen was completely dead. Joel, I agree with you 100% about that. I'm not saying Drew Smith. I don't want Drew Smith on this team. But I'd rather have him in the 5th or the 6th inning than coming in the 7th or 8th inning. The fact of the matter is, you can't find many guys that had better ERAs than Adam Ottavino. And I don't care. Look, walks were up and strikeouts were down, right? But you could say that about Ryan Stanek, who had an outstanding year 2 years ago as well. His walks were up and his strikeouts were down. Yet he had a full ERA more than Adam Ottavino. So that tells me that Adam Ottavino stranded more guys than Ryan Stanek last year. Now, I can go back to any player I want and go back to his 2 years ago when they had better years, but we don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about 2 years ago, but you don't want to talk about last year. Well, I can tell you that what if Marte is better than he was last year? It's kind of hard to be worse, right? I think Starlin Marte is going to be better because you're going to be able to give him more days off. The problem with the Mets last year it was the fact that they had no other alternative when guys went down. This year, they do. They can give Marte a day or two off because of the fact that they wanted, you got Taylor, you got DJ Stewart, you got guys that can fill roles here. You can give Marte days off. You can keep him healthier. You don't have to play him every single day because the lineup was desperate for him. That's the important thing. Okay, Joel, but again, how do you not trust nobody? You had Rayleigh and Ottavino that had just over a 3 ERA, which, again, find me guys that were better. We forget about that fact. Again, Drew Smith and a bunch of nobodies were pitching in the 7th and 8th innings because the Mets had nobody else. Because David Robertson was supposed to be a bridge guy to Diaz. Now, I like Jorge Lopez. I think you just brought up Jorge Lopez. Why do you think Jorge Lopez is going to be good? Why do you trust nobody? Why do you trust Lopez? He was terrible last year. Oh, because you went back 2 years ago when he was actually really good. You see, it fits your narrative. That's the problem. Don't tell me about 2 years ago when Jorge Lopez was one of the worst relievers last year in baseball. But you trust Jorge Lopez. Okay, Adam Ottavino has a big arm. He throws 97, 98 and has a wicked slider, just like Jorge Lopez. A big arm. I mean, come on. No, Otto doesn't have a shit arm. He throws 97, 98, just like Jorge Lopez. Look at his average. Again, Google. He throws 96 to 98. Jorge Lopez throws just as hard. Yet, Jorge Lopez was worse last year than Adam Ottavino, but you trust Jorge Lopez. Now, I think Jorge Lopez is going to be fine. But don't tell me you trust him when he had a terrible season last year because you're going to go back to 2 years ago when he was a closer for the Orioles and had a really good season. Yes, look, he throws 96 to 98. Again, he doesn't consistently throw 98, but he's throwing 96 and 97, which is more than enough, especially when you have a slider like Adam Ottavino, just like Jorge Lopez. No, he didn't. Look at it. He was throwing 95 to 97, occasionally a 98. Again, you got to remember, they use their bullpen a ton early on in the season. Guys are not going to throw as hard later in the year when you completely worn them down. And San Francisco 49ers are going to the Super Bowl to face Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting. So we got the Kansas City Swifties against the San Francisco 49ers. No, easy. And I'm not saying that Adam Ottavino is going to be 8th inning guy. I do believe Jorge Lopez is going to be the 8th inning guy. I think Jorge Lopez has the potential to be that 8th inning guy and occasionally close some games when Diaz got to get days off. But when you push everybody back, when Rayleigh is not going to be your 7th, 8th inning guy now, he'll probably be your 6th, 7th guy along with Ottavino. Now that the Mets have options in the 6th and 7th inning, which they didn't have last year with the Diaz injury, the fact of the matter is the Mets were trying to find guys to get to David Robinson. They could not hold leads, get into David Robinson. That was the problem. When you go back and you see that Rayleigh had to pitch 7th, 8th inning, Ottavino had to pitch 7th and 8th inning, even Drew Smith was your 7th inning guy. That's a problem. But now you push everybody back, and now say if Jorge Lopez, now I think Jorge Lopez, even if he pitches to a 3.8 to a 4 ERA, again, look at the bullpens around the league. There's not a lot of good guys in bullpens other than closers. They're rolling with a 3.5 to a 4.5 ERA. That's the range of bullpen arms. Look around the league. I looked at it yesterday because I know I was going to talk a lot about the bullpen, and we'll get to the rotation in a second. With the bullpen, well, Joe, yeah, I understand that, but with the new rules, the majority of the pitchers can't hold on runners anyway, especially bullpen guys, who are most of them are bad on holding on runners. Otto is worse. I truly understand that. But again, even with that walk, Ottavino stranded more runners than the guys that you're talking about. All right, so what was I going to say? Oh, I'm sorry. So I was looking at bullpen arms. I just looked at the National League because what matters to me, and specifically the NL East. Look at the bullpens. Not many guys have less than a 3.5 ERA. Most of them are 3.5 or higher. That's how bullpens are now. That's how a lot of teams build bullpens, right? The Houston Astros, you would think they have a super bullpen with what they did by signing Hader. But I don't know if Hader is going to be the 9th inning guy for the Astros. If he's not the 9th inning guy, I think that's going to be a problem because Hader, if you look at his ERA in the 8th inning, it's absolutely garbage, right? And that's what I was talking about. The Yankees have a stellar bullpen. Why do they have a stellar bullpen, right? Can and somebody brought it up earlier. They were talking about King, Loizaga. King's gone now. Loizaga's coming back from injury, right? I mean, they're basically no names that nobody knew of 2 years ago, but they ended up being good, just like the Brewers. The Brewers threw relievers against the wall, and besides their closer, everybody else are guys that nobody knows about. Yet, they were good. Yeah, but Bravos, I was looking at the NL East bullpens, where a lot of them have 3.5 ERA, and not the closer, just your bridge guys to your closer, the 6th to the 6th to 8th inning guys. A lot of them, almost all of them, are 3.5 to a 4.5 ERA, if not higher. It's rare that you have multiple bullpen arms that are 3 ERA or less. It's rare. If you have 2 of them, you're probably going to have a good bullpen. But let's not act like these big names, because the majority of the big names that are out there are probably closers that you expect them to have a 2.5 ERA or under a 3 ERA. Your closer. Well, yeah, Fujinami. Fujinami he didn't have a good season last year, so why do you want Fujinami? You see, that's the point. You're bringing up guys that had worse seasons than what the Mets just signed. You said you trust Jorge Lopez more than anybody else other than, you trust Diaz and Jorge Lopez, but you don't trust the guy that was actually better than Jorge Lopez because you're going back to, and you said, he has a big arm. I can name you 99 guys that have big arms, but that can't throw. Okay, but we have the power arms. Again, all these minor league signings, look at these guys. All these guys have big arms with big sliders. All of them do. So, do you want Austin Adams? He was a minor league signing. He has a big arm. Or do you don't trust him because you never heard of him? Yeah, but with the bullpen, it's hard to kill David Stearns when he built bullpens 6 out of his 8 years, having one of the top 5 bullpens in baseball. Yet people kill him. No, I'm see again. You're mistaken what I'm saying. I'm not saying Ottavino was the best, but you can find a lot of worse relievers than Adam Ottavino. You trust Jorge Lopez because he has a big arm. Yet the guy has a terrible walk percentage. Yes, he has high strikeouts, but he walks the ballpark, and again has a career 5.50 ERA. So you want him because he had one excellent season with the Orioles as a closer. I can name you, Drew Smith has a big arm. Why don't you like Drew Smith? He throws 98. Why don't you like Drew Smith? You know why? Because he sucks. That's why. Well, Adam Ottavino is not the bottom of the barrel. He is one of the above average relievers on the market. I'm sorry. Ryan Stanek is not better than Adam Ottavino. Career-wise, not even close. Ryan Stanek had 2 really good seasons in his career. Look at the rest of his career. Not very good. His 2023 season is more like his career stats than the prior 2 seasons. Adam Ottavino, who pitched in Colorado, was a really good to excellent reliever in Colorado, was pretty good for the Yankees, and was good for the Mets. He was really good in 2022 and had a down season last year, yet a down season is a 3.21 ERA. Now, he has to lower those walks and increase those strikeouts. I agree with you on that part, but you can say that about every reliever. I can say that about Raley. I can say that about Drew Smith. I can say that about Jorge Lopez. I can say that about Bickford. I can say that about Reed Foley. I can say that about a lot of guys. Jordan, I'm going to say they're hovering around a 3rd wild card spot, just like many other teams in baseball. Now, just like every other team in baseball, a lot of things have to go right. I think you can say that. Like, I go into a season given projections based on everybody being healthy, because you could say the Yankees are projected to win 92 games, 93 games, but if Aaron Judge goes down, well, that number's going to change. I always go on projections if everybody is healthy. If everybody is healthy, the Mets are going to have a better season than they did last year. Now, is that 82 wins, 85 wins? I think they're probably between 80 and 85. Now, if things go right and guys have better seasons than they did last year, right? If Kodai Senga did what he did last year, he's a top 5 pitcher in baseball in the National League, which he was last year. Jose Quintana is your pretty good veteran that if he stays healthy, he'll give you quality starts, which most starters do nowadays. That's not an ace. Sean Manaea, who, according to everything you hear, if you look at his second half of the season, when he went into the pitching lab, he figured something out, developed a new pitch, and he became a better pitcher. Now, his strikeouts wasn't high, but his ERA was tremendously better. He was putting batters were hitting the ball more, but they were mostly ground balls and they were mostly outs. Severino, I think last year was an anomaly with Severino. If you can keep Severino healthy, he'll probably pitch you his career ERA, which is what, 3.6, 3.7, which, look at a lot of 4th and 5th starters in baseball. That's the ERAs you're getting with those type of back end rotation guys. Hauser is your veteran pitcher that is going to give you 5 innings mostly, that occasionally will give you 6 innings, will keep your team in ball games. That's what he did with the Brewers. If you look at his games, he's had good games, he's had okay games, and occasionally he'll throw a gem. No name. I don't even think there's going to be 3 more pickups, to be quite honest with you. I would like 1 more. And if I had to choose between a bullpen arm or a DH, I would rather go with the DH bat, because I think this lineup could use it. I think the protection for Pete Alonso, I think, is very important. And bullpens are a hit and miss. Joel, I agree with you. The fact that and this is what I brought up, and I think, Joel, I think you agreed with me the last time I brought this up. I mean, tell me if I was wrong, but I think you did. If your rotation stays healthy, regardless of what the ERA looks like, that I'm not saying that they got to be 5-6 ERAs, but if they pitch to their career ERAs, which a lot of the times these pitchers do, like, let's be honest, if you keep your rotation, I would say 3 out of your 5 starters stay healthy, and one of them has to be Kodai Senga, you're okay. But like the Mets last year, you had four guys in your rotation be hurt for long stretches. You're not going to have a good season. It's hard to have that with your depth. Like, your depth is already depleted. If you have 3 out of your 5 starters and one of those 3 are Kodai Senga remaining healthy, like, let me put it this way. If Senga, Quintana, and one of Stevie or Manayer stay healthy, and I think Hauser, who has shown no signs of injuries and has just been a back in the rotation guy that will give you 5 innings, keep your team in ball games, which is perfectly fine in my understanding. If the Mets need, I think Quintana is going to be healthy. That was a freak injury last year, which for a guy who holds a Quintana in his career, is an innings guy who gives you innings, I think Quintana is going to be fine. If either Severino or Manaea remain healthy, this rotation is going to be fine. I'm not saying great. It's going to be a rotation that's probably going to be a top 10 rotation in the National League, which is, I would probably be better than that. I would say between 7 and 8 in the National League, which is more than enough. Because if you look at it last year, if the Mets got at best average starts from their rotation, they would have been right in the mix in the wild card. Joel, exactly. And that's why it hurt the Mets last year. Because I think even if Verlander went down and Scherzer went down, if Quintana was healthy last year, the Mets would have been fine. Because look what happened when Quintana came back from his injury. All they had was Quintana and Senga, yet the Mets were winning games. Because when you trust 2 guys out of your 5 guys in your rotation to give you quality starts and give you a team a chance to win, you're almost guaranteed to win those games, or at least have a good team. And I'll tell you right now, all the Mets need is Severino or Manaea to remain healthy and to give you to a 3.4 to a 3.8 ERA or even a 4 ERA. I'm telling you right now, that's going to help this team stay in it at the trade deadline, which is all this team needs to do. I told you this before, guys, and let's get to the last part of the topic. I just want to say I think the Mets are going to go with a 6-man rotation, but right now I see them with a 5th-man rotation because I don't think you necessarily have to go to a 6-man unless the Mets sign another starter. If they sign a Clevenger or if they miraculously sign a Montgomery or a Snell out of nowhere, which I doubt it, but if they do, they're probably going to go to a 6-man. I'd rather go to a 5th-man because I like that 6th, 7th, 8th starter as depth just in case of an injury. Because if you go into a 6-man rotation, that means you only got 2 guys as depth pieces or maybe 3 guys as depth pieces, and you don't want one of your 6 starters to go down because now you got to replace it with depth, and now your depth gets a lot shorter. At least with 5-man rotation, which most of these guys are accustomed to. Because you got to remember, guys, you can't just go through a 6-man rotation and expect pitchers that have been used to pitching every 5th day in their career. Not every pitcher pitches well with an extra day rest. Just because Senga did it and other Japanese pitchers did it doesn't mean that guys who've pitched in the major leagues for a number of years and are used to a 5-man rotation, some guys don't pitch well with an extra day off because their slider might be a couple of ticks higher miles per hour wise, and that hurts them. Chester, I don't think Tyler is probably your sixth man. I think Joey Lucchesi is your sixth man. The fact of the matter is that the Mets need Manaea or Severino to be healthy. Because I think Quintana, again, if you look at the injury that Quintana had last year, that was a freak injury. That's not a pitching injury that he had. Like, it wasn't from pitching. Like, it was a weird injury that a pitcher never had. A pitcher never had that type of injury. So I think Quintana's going to be fine. Quintana, which is 3.4, 3.5 ERA, is perfectly fine. If you get Senga pitching to a 3 ERA, 2.93 ERA, I have no problem with that. The fact of the matter is, all you need is Manaea or Severino to remain healthy. And I think it's more likely that Manaea will remain healthy than Severino, because Manaea has remained, for the most part, healthy. He just hasn't pitched well. But again, he developed a new splitter. He went to that pitching lab. He has a few more ticks. He figured out his mechanics that helps him throw to what he used to throw fastball-wise, which is 94, 95, 96. Last year, early in the season, he was throwing 91 to 93. So that extra tick on his couple of ticks on his fastball made it so much better in the second half, along with that new pitch he developed in that splitter. So Hauser is your fifth guy. You expect your fifth guy to have a above 4 ERA most of the time. Most of your fifth starters are going to be a 4 ERA or higher. Hauser's going to give you innings. He's going to give you a chance to win. Occasionally, he won't pitch well, and occasionally he'll throw a gem. But he'll be in that midpoint of an average guy. If Severino remains healthy, there's no reason why you can't see him pitch to his career ERA, which is around the 3.6, 3.7. So we'll see. I think the Yankees destroyed Luis Severino. If you look what they did to Severino last year, they gave him every opportunity to fail. They put him on the IL. They didn't take him off when they were supposed to. They let him linger. He was pissed off, giving him days off when he didn't ask for them. It was a lot going on in that aspect. The fact of the matter is, Severino, if you can get 20-plus starts from him, I think he's going to be fine. And I think people are frowning on his rotation a lot more because they're not big names. But this rotation, all they have to do is be average. If they're average, they're going to be good enough to put into the bullpen that, let's be honest, with Diaz, the bullpen looks a lot better. Now, I'm not telling you that the Mets are going to have 95 wins. Now, everything has to be right. Severino can pitch like an ace, and Senga can pitch even better. And Manaea can be a number 2 that he was with Oakland. If that happens, well, now you can look at 90-plus, but I'm not going to go there. That's not fair. I don't think that this team deserves it yet until they prove it. I told you, right now, again, you can't project injuries. You just project with what the roster looks like as healthy. That's where you project teams with health. With health, I see them between 80 and 85 win team. Now, if things look better during the first half and the Mets are in it at the trade deadline, they're going to buy. They're going to get better. Now, I'm telling you right now, the problem with the Mets last year was their June. They had a terrible June. If the Mets have solid April, May, and June, they're going to be in the mix. Because besides a couple of the top teams, all the other teams are in the middle of the pack. Just where the Mets are. You could see them winning 85 games. You could see them winning 81 games. Yeah, easy, but taking a step back is still probably a top closer in baseball, or one of them. You know, it's hard to have a 1.9 ERA in his 2 years ago. Like, if he has a 2.4 ERA, that's a step back, but that's still a lot good. Well, Joel, all we needed is to have a 500 June. Again, if you remain a couple of games over 500 each month, you're going to be right in the mix of a wild card, number 2 and number 3 wild card. It's just that simple. So I wanted to talk about Alvarez before I call it a night, guys. Alvarez projections are a little odd, but his projections are 230, 24 to 26 home runs, around 76 RBIs. Now, Sanders, 260 is a little much for me for a guy who's never hit for average I can't really go on his minor league average, even though his average wasn't great in the minor leagues. He needs to hit around 240. Alvarez has to hit 30 home runs at the least, between 28 and 30 home runs for me to consider him a guy that is worth being in this lineup. You can't give me 25, 24, 25 home runs, batting 230. That doesn't do nothing. That's not good enough. I need him to be that power bat that is approaching 30 home runs. Now, with those 30 home runs, you're probably going to have about 80 to 85 RBIs. But anything less than 30 home runs, I think is an issue for this team. Now, I don't care 230, 240. I like the 240 average. 230 I can live with if you're hitting 30-plus home runs. But if you're batting 220 even if he bats 240 and only hits 25 home runs, that's not going to cut it. We need Alvarez to be a 30 home run guy. And I think he can be that guy. I think with a little bit more work at the plate, a little bit more plate discipline, his power is going to show. So 260 is a little much average-wise. I don't see that. Well, Joel, Beatty would have had competition. I thought Mauricio was going to get the third base job. And unfortunately, Beatty doesn't have no competition because, well, Mauricio was his competition. Now, maybe Jet Williams shows a lot in AAA. And now I think the pressure is going to come from the minors. If Jet Williams has a good start to his minor league season, he might be pushing and putting that pressure on Brett Beatty. There is pressure on Brett Beatty this year. Let's not act like, Brett Beatty is not going to just be given the job. Now, he's going to probably be projected as a starter, but if he has a down spring training, I'd rather go with Joey Wendell. I know he's going to have a good glove. He's not going to give you much offensively, but he'll give you a veteran at-bat. He'll give you a tough at-bat. He might not hit home runs, but he'll give you a tough at-bat. Brett Beatty was basically a no contest. There was no, I was never scared of Brett. If I'm a pitcher, I'm not scared of Brett Beatty. At least Joey Wendell will give you a veteran at-bat. Now, you can put Jeff McNeil, but again, I don't think they're going to bring up Acuna yet or put Jet Williams there at second base. I think you leave McNeil in second base at the time. But if Brett Beatty doesn't play well in spring training, Joey Wendell's going to be a third baseman. And I'm okay with that for the time being. But if Jet Williams starting to show stuff in AA, AAA, bring him up and let him be a third baseman. That's the way I see it. Because Joey Wendell, again, he's got a good glove. He's better than Brett Beatty defensively. He'll give you a competitive at-bat. Not much offense, but he'll give you he'll take his walks. He'll give you a competitive at-bat. He won't, be a no contest like Brett Beatty was last year. But Brett Beatty's going to have every chance to win the job. I would love to see Brett Beatty just look for average first and then worry about the power later. Yeah, I agree, Joel. He's a quadruple A player. He kills the ball in spring train in the minors and in spring training. I think Brett Beatty needs to worry about his average, put him bad on the ball, and then the power will come because he does have that big body power mentality. I projected Brett Beatty to be a 25 home run guy. He's not showing that. And on top of that, he's not showing average either. He needs to work on back to ball skills and get that average up and then let the power come as you put the bat on the ball more. That's important for Brett Beatty. All right, guys. So that was a late edition Mets Hot Stove for tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to the roundtable guys probably going to do a Mets hot stove. So a lot of these topics are going to be very similar, but you're going to get the opinions of Nelson, of Hayden, of Chris. Most likely it's going to be all of us. Again, things can change with scheduling, but we're going to get their opinions on some of these topics, and of course, new topics that we're going to talk about in the group chat, and then we'll bring it to you guys. So tomorrow, pretty good chance it's going to be a Mets hot stove with a couple of guys from the round table around normal time, 7 o'clock. I did 9 o'clock tonight because of the football games. Doing it at 7 o'clock, it was right in the middle of a game. So I didn't want to, bite into that with a lot of people watching football. So once again, guys, thank you for tuning in to a late edition of Mets Hot Stove Live. It was always a great chat with you guys, going back and forth. Again, the upcoming schedule for the Mets. Don't look at the boat to February 24th. The February 24th is the spring training opening day. March 16th was the other day that I was supposed to put there, is the spring breakout, which the best prospects of teams are going to be playing against another best prospects of another team on March 16th, which is going to be cool to see. And March 28th is obviously opening day for the New York Mets against the Milwaukee Brewers. So with that said, everybody have a great night. Another Mets hot stove in the books. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets. I'll see you next time. Good night, guys.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step